I think we pretty well took care of number 3 on our sheet. So what I want to do is move on from there. I do want to say that I believe that using a parable in teaching and understanding, and boy, we have all kinds of examples. When Jesus used a parable, it was a real art. A real art. He just had the knack for it. And I know, yes, he was the Son of God. I understand that, but he was also a preacher, a man who had to deal with a lot of the physical things in life as well. But I just wanted to say that it might be stories to some people, but I want us to think about the picture that it actually paints. Let me give you some examples of some things that he did. When we read some of the parables, and I'll get into some of the detail on these later as time permits, we see poor homes and little lands that are being oppressed by other people. We see baking of bread and patching of garments, and we even see emergencies of a friend borrowing a loaf at midnight for his sudden guests and things like that. Rich homes are drawn with a pencil by a man, and they can make it look so good. But the contrast of what you see something and what it really is far different. A church, you can drive down a road and drive by it just like a church that's been kept up. You know, everything looks like they've been working and painting, and the gutters aren't falling down, and the paint chipping off the front door and stuff like that. But even with all of that, you don't know what's inside. You don't know what's inside. A church is not boards and plaster. A church is made up of people. And we are people. And because of that, you know, we can make that congregation be what it ought to be. And I think that's something that we really need to work on, especially ourselves. You may not ever be able to help somebody be better other than encouraging them and praying for them. It's a decision they have to make, just like coming to the Lord in obedience. You know, you can't do that for them, but you can encourage them, you can pray for them, and do all that you can to show them the importance of doing that. So it's like kind of like the things that I'm talking about here. Okay, so let's go ahead and look now at number 4. Basically, I don't have an exact count. I don't think anybody does. But when you look at the parables of Jesus, and I'm going to give you an example, and you can check it out and you can count them. I'm not going to. I've got some notes to them, but I come up with about 57 in the New Testament, and of course they're all unique to the gospel accounts. I see 23 in Matthew. You may find more or less. Mark's got about 8. Would you believe that Luke has 24? A little bit more than Matthew. And no particular reason why I just picked out Matthew, I just did. Okay? I'm trying to keep it as simple as I can. And John, even John, not known to be a parable gospel, has at least 2. And they are unique to all the others. And when I say unique, there are ones that Matthew has that no other book has. He has 11 unique parables, only in Matthew. So that's kind of why I decided to go in that direction. But it doesn't matter. It's just some numbers that I came up with that I wanted to share with you. Okay, and I give you the sheet, bottom of the sheet there to put your numbers down if you wanted to. Number 6. Flip over now to the back side. Okay. Now there are categories of parables. They're not all the same. Let me give you some that I've got listed here, down through, I guess, about number 10, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think that's what I've got. Number 6, there are parables of the coming kingdom, which is the church. Now, when you look at all these, they're all kingdom parables. But in particular, number 6, of the coming kingdom, the church. Remember in Matthew 6, when Jesus gave the model prayer. Now, a lot of times people refer to that as the Lord's Prayer. Brethren, that's not the Lord's Prayer. The Lord's Prayer is John 17. Okay? Now, the reason in Matthew 6 it's the model prayer is simply because the disciples asked Jesus how they can pray. And you know the prayer. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Now Jesus introduces this to his disciples. Jesus has not died on the cross yet. Jesus is still living under the old law. So are the disciples at this time. But now since Jesus died, and his kingdom, the church, has been established and was done so and practiced on the day of Pentecost, we can no longer pray that prayer in Matthew 6 and pray for the kingdom to come. It's already come. You can't pray for something to come if it's already here. Jesus did with his disciples because, excuse me, it hadn't happened yet. So, Matthew 13:44, you have those verses there. I'll pick out one of them and read Matthew 20 verse 1 and Matthew 22:2. And one of those says, for the kingdom of heaven is like unto a certain king, which made a marriage for his son. Now, if you have a king, what else do you have? Kingdom. A kingdom. And not only a kingdom, you've got to have a territory. Then you have to have what? People. Subjects. Along with that, of course, you've already got laws. Man he's always had a law, always will, until this world ends. So now you have the components of a kingdom. Kingdom, territory, subjects, and a king. Number 7, you have parables of loss and redemption. Think about Luke 15. And again, we'll go back and look at some of these in detail. Luke 15. You have 3 parables there that are so key. You have the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the lost sons. Why does it say sons? Well, okay, but now are we talking about the prodigal son? How would that be plural? Think about this. Sometimes we don't realize the importance of that second son. The first son said, look, I've grown up now, I'm a mature man, give me all that stuff that you can give me, and let me go. And he did. And while he was gone, he's classified as a lost son. But he realized one day that he needed to change his life. And he came back home. But now let's talk about the other son at that time. His attitude toward his brother put him in a class whereby he is lost. He got all upset because he's jealous. And who is the father in this story? God. And he sees the lost son coming home. And if you notice in this story, God runs toward him. He recognizes him a long way off. And he wants the best for him. Because he said, your brother was lost. And I'm paraphrasing, now he's come home. But to the brother, I don't think he really cared, do you? He didn't care whether he came home or not. He was jealous because he got all this stuff being gone. He wanted to know where his stuff's at. And the father said, son, you've always had this. And I paraphrased the whole thing. You need to read that in parables regarding Luke 15. Okay, number 8. Parables about prayer. In Luke 18, verse 1, and he spake a parable unto them to this end, that men ought to always to pray, and not to faint. Don't get discouraged. Don't quit. Brethren, listen to me. The only one thing that you can do other than be faithful is to pray. You can't change a lot of things in life, but you can always pray. Always. Number 9. Parables of forgiveness and compassion. In Matthew 18, 21 to 35, we're not going to read all that. Matthew 18, 21 to 35, a portion of that says, Lord, how oft shall my brother sin against me, and I forgive him? Now that prompts a parable from Jesus. And the question he asks is, do I need to forgive him 7 times? You know what? If that man's asking that question, he doesn't even want to do it 1 time. Much less 7, kind of been rhetorical 7 times. And what was the reply? No, I tell you, not 7 times, but what? 70 times 7. So now listen, brethren. 70 times 7 is what? 490 times. And when you forgive him that 490th time, and he sins against you and come back the 491st time, let him have it, right? No. Jesus is not playing math games here. He says, look, when he comes back, he forgives you, and you need to forgive him as oft as he's sincere and comes back and asks for forgiveness. Now, let me share something with you. I worked for a little congregation one time back in the 70s. And it seemed like almost every week, the same person came forward. And I thought, well, at first I didn't realize that until the person did it and did it and did it and did it. So I went to visit this person. I said, you know, I'd just like to know, you're having some issues, some problems. Can we help you with something? Can we study the Bible? Do you have a question about something? What can we do to help you? Could I infringe on your time if you don't mind? Let's talk about it. No, she said, well, no, I just feel so unworthy. And I said, guess what? There's not a one of us that ought to feel worthy. Because, as Brenda was talking, coming up here, compared to Jesus, we are so unworthy of his love, compassion, and forgiveness. But aren't you glad, though, that he does have compassion and forgiveness, and we can be forgiven? Absolutely. So after we talked a little bit more about that, then she said, well, I think I understand. She said, I think I didn't really understand before. I said, well, when you feel like you need to repent and come forward, it doesn't make any difference how many times you do it. I just want to make sure that you understood, and I had some questions, and I wanted to make sure I talked with you. And from that day forward, things were a whole lot better. She still came forward some, but nothing like that. And look, let me ask you a question, brethren. Come Sunday, when you all serve the Lord's table, I don't know how you all do it now with the pandemic. I'll tell you what we do at Stanton. We have the cups out on the table, and we don't pass the cups. Still, we don't. We want them to get the cups. But before, when we passed the trays, like maybe some of you all still do, that's your call. Do you take the tray and look at somebody and say, well, you're not a Christian. I'm going to bypass you and pass the tray around to somebody else? You know what that's called? Besides hypocrisy, that's what I call it. That's called closed communion. And do you know you do not have a right to do that? No matter what. No matter what. Now maybe that person doesn't understand the purpose for taking the communion. Yes, and maybe you need to do some teaching. Absolutely. But don't ever be so arrogant that you think that you can decide who gets the cup and who doesn't. I know the situation that still causes some hard feelings because of that. And because of that, part of the family is in denominationalism. And it's all because of that. Refusing the communion to someone in services. Brethren, that's about as hypocritical as you can get, because now you are judging. And you don't have the right to do that. I haven't read my Bible anywhere where an elder, or a preacher, or anybody else got that right to do that. It's your decision. But you do need to be taught. And yes, indeed it is. It's for Christians. But you don't refuse somebody that you think is not a Christian. You just don't do it. You further teach them. Okay. Questions, comments, anybody before I go to number 10? Number 10. There are parables of eschatology. And all that big old fancy word is talking about end times. I have heard all of my life. My poor grandmother, Brenda, you remember, Grandma. Oh, honey, things are so bad right now. The Lord's going to come any second. Now listen, he could have, but he didn't. Now, I'm not saying, I'm not making fun, I'm not belittling somebody because they may believe that. But don't you still hear that today? The way things are in the world today, it can't last much longer. Haven't you heard that? All the time. I'm going to tell you what, and this is a little play on people's understanding, and I do it all the time. I know, but this is going to get me in trouble. Y'all are going to disfellowship me now. But I want you to hear me all the way through. I know when the Lord's going to come. And you do too. But I'm going to ask you all. Hold up your hands if you know when the Lord's going to come again.
When God tells him to.
When God gets ready. So see, we understand that, don't we? Now, here's the kicker. When's that going to be? Well, I'll tell you what. If the Lord Jesus doesn't know, and the angels don't know, is there any reason why I don't know? And we have people out here making money off this stuff all the time, writing books, making movies, and trying to predict when the world's going to come to an end. That's just pure, plain, false teaching. The world will end when the Lord is ready. When God is ready to send Jesus. And as we see him as he left. Now, we didn't see him leave. But I guarantee you we're going to see him when he comes. Because the Bible says what? Every eye shall see, Every tongue shall confess, every knee shall bow. I think I mentioned this last week. Excuse me if I'm being too repetitive.
I don't believe you did.
You don't know what I'm going to say yet. I'm going to say this, Marvin, I'm sorry. Somebody says, I'm not going to bow before God.
No, I don't believe you said it last week.
No, I didn't. Well, maybe you won't do it while you have the choice. But I'm going to tell you what, you're going to do it when God has the choice. And you're probably going to be one of the first ones He's going to make you bow because of your arrogance and stupidity. If you're going to have to bow before God and show humility and obedience, why don't you do it while you're alive before you die so you can be saved? Why not? If you're going to have to do it when it really counts. That's what I preach all the time. Now, I hope you don't get that mixed up. Is that what you're thinking of, Marvin? Okay. Marvin's my man. He knows.
No, I don't.
Okay. Number 11. Yes, go right ahead.
Will sound crazy.
I've got an answer. It may not be the right one.
Okay, so I know that Jesus will come back when God says. But doesn't it say somewhere in the Bible that as the days of Noah was, so is the Son of Man?
Angie, it's a little bit louder. I can't hear you.
As the days of Noah, so is the Son of Man.
Yes, okay. Talking about Noah's days, well, all he's talking about is this. How many years did Noah preach from building the ark? 120. How many people went in the ark?
8.
8 people. Why not more? They didn't obey, and they simply did not believe, and when the last one went in, God closed the door. I mentioned last week, I know I said this, when God closes the door, you ain't going to get in there. Okay, now, in comparison, talking about Noah's days, they was living every day like, oh, they had plenty of time. Hey, don't worry about tomorrow. I'll see you next week. I hope we have class next Thursday night. But I'm going to tell you what, if we don't have class next Thursday night because the Lord comes before, I hope we don't have class next week. I would much rather the Lord come. But see, He's just simply saying there, in that context, that people are not going to be generally prepared. They can be and should be, but they weren't even in the days of Noah. If they were, and by the way, I don't know, Jason, have you ever heard, you brother elders, have you heard how many people were actually alive during the days of Noah? Anybody? It doesn't matter, but there's a whole bunch of them. I guarantee you that, a whole bunch of them. But only 8 people? I like to use a sermon like that sometime when the elders may be getting a little bit uncomfortable because your membership is not growing. So, if your membership is not growing, guess who's probably going to be the one at fault? Well, they're probably going to come to the preacher and say, now, preacher, we need to do something about this. Well, we can only do so much. We can only preach it. We can't make them respond. I have several things to say about that. Another thing to say about that is, how do you know that people are not growing inwardly instead of numerically? How do you know that? Don't know that. Don't know that. We had this, let me give you another example about, I don't see where people come from when they say this. Well, we need to keep a radio program going. I love a radio program. We used to have a great spot up in Stanton at 9 o'clock every Sunday morning. A great spot right before Bluegrass hour. Guess who listens to bluegrass music up there? Everybody. So they're already listening, right? And then people say, well, I don't think other preachers come. And I don't really think, when's the last time somebody was converted from that? And you know what I use?
We don't know.
Go ahead, brother.
We don't know.
Okay. Yeah, Steve, go
I
ahead.
baptized a man at Point Pleasant because he heard a sermon on the Search the Lord's Way.
Mm-hmm.
could be a TV it's a TV
Yeah,
program.
yeah, sure. I watch
So,
it.
so, you know.
Yeah, yeah. But then they go around and say, well, we're going to have Vacation Bible School every year. But because I'm a proponent of the radio program, and I'm not against Vacation Bible School, don't get me wrong. When's the last time you had a convert from Vacation Bible School? But do you see what I'm saying? That's not the norm. Norma, you're not normal. I mean, but you see what I'm saying, folks? I mean, you can't really think that way.
So if you're not doing the radio program and you're not doing the VBS, then what are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing. You're
Nothing.
sitting there on the money and it's sitting there and you're not doing a thing.
And the thing of it is, when you're doing that, when you're doing nothing, you are dying. You're either growing or dying. That's it, brethren. Yes.
Well, I was going to say they attach that to everything you do.
Yeah.
That's the comeback. Well, how many have been converted from? I
Right.
just really don't know. You
Right.
know?
To
So
try-
I would rather be on the error of doing than not
Right.
doing.
Well, that's just a good work to be involved in, brother.
When you look at Matthew 25,
Pardon?
when you look at Matthew 25, the parable of the talents, what did Jesus call the one who did nothing?
Mm-hmm.
Wicked.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't out murdering people. He
That's
wasn't
right.
out sleeping
That's right.
around. He just didn't do anything.
That's right.
And he was wicked.
Some people just don't want to do anything and ride the laurels of everybody else. Okay,
And the
Brenda?
thing is, the elders go to the preacher, but aren't the elders also responsible for
Feeding
feeding
the
the flock?
Every
Making,
Christian
you know,
It doesn't
helping them
stop.
to grow.
Yeah, it filters through everybody.
yes,
Everybody, look,
members, elders, deacons, everybody.
we have a preacher here, an elder here, and an elder over here, but I'm gonna tell you something. Besides all of that, they still have an individual Christian responsibility.
Yeah.
And we all know that. And it's not easy being an elder and a preacher and a Christian. I know. I've been one. Marvin?
Isn't it everybody's responsibility to add to the church? Are we supposed to witness for the Lord all the time?
That's right.
Pray without ceasing?
That's right. That's right. Okay, any questions or comments so far? Let's go on. Let's finish up this number 10. I didn't talk a lot about that. We'll take a break here in a few minutes, for about 10 minutes, and then we'll go to 8:30. Okay, is that okay, Jason?
Yep.
Okay, that's about the best I can do. Okay, so eschatology is talking about end times. Matthew 25, just like Brother Jason was talking about, contains 3 of these parables. Boy, he's a good straight man, isn't he? Right there. 10 virgins, the talents, and the sheep and goats. Now, what about those parables? Again, I mentioned last time that normally a parable has one main point, but you may have some subliminal sub-points that aren't all that major, but yet they are there. Okay, let's go on to 11 and 12. I want to finish this part right here, and then we'll take a break. And then we'll come back and look at the other page. Okay, purpose of parables. Number 11. A parable, if handled properly, and Jesus always did, it will cause interest. It will cause interest in the hearers. I'm sorry. How many knows the meaning of kiss in teaching?
We said keep it simple, sweetie.
What'd you say?
We said keep it simple, sweetie.
Sweetie.
Yeah.
I didn't hear it that way. I heard keep it simple, stupid.
Well, that was the line.
Or it could be keep it simple, shoemaker, right? Anybody else have anything you want to say about that? I saw some other hands. Okay, so that's what I'm going to try to do. You know, and I have taught as many years as I've preached because I love to do it. But you don't need to get above people. You need to make sure you teach in such a way that people understand. You can get up there and prove how smart you are, but you're just proving really how ignorant you are because people won't listen to you. They don't understand. And what is communication all about? Get it out there, receive it back. Okay? The way I know that you all understand is by answering questions and asking questions and making comments. Okay?
And
So-
quizzes.
Yeah. So, for just a second, I want you to refer to Mark 12:37. Mark 12:37. Now, this describes what I'm talking about. Mark 12:37 says simply, and the common people heard him gladly. Why? How was it that, huh?
36?
Did I not read the right verse?
36?
Yeah, you did.
Mark 12:37.
Mark.
I'm sorry,
Mark, you
I
have-
just read it wrong.
Yeah, Matthew's on
Matthew.
Yeah, Mark. I thought I said that, but I must have.
Yeah, you did.
Said it
You
wrong.
wrote down right.
But anyway, the common people, the ordinary, the simple, average people heard him gladly. Now, did he succeed? He must have, because how did they hear him?
Gladly.
They were glad to hear what he had to say.
With delight.
Okay? So, number 12. And we're going to take a 10-minute break. Number 12. To help people remember. That's another way of putting parables, to help people remember. Angie has the most unique way of memorizing things that absolutely confuses me. Do you want to give us an example of how you can remember something? Oh my, when I was in college, Jason, I don't know how you memorized or whatever, but I would look at 2 or 3 points and memorize them, even verses. And then I would go back and keep going over those 3. Then I would look at the next one and add another one to it and just keep creeping that way. That's not the way my wife does. I get so lost, but she'll remember something has happened based upon the way something looked at that building at the certain time of the day if you turn in a certain direction. I mean, I get so confused. But it works for her. It works for her. So if it works for you, then that's good. That's what we should do. Okay? So let's take a 10-minute break. 10 minutes, come back. We'll finish up in 30 more minutes. I promise you.